You know that emotional distance you instinctively create? It's not a rejection of your partner. It's actually a highly effective automated defense strategy against a deeply feared perceived threat, the threat of being engulfed, of losing yourself. This intense need for independence is a strange paradox, isn't it? It's a superpower that has absolutely allowed you to survive, but it might also be the very thing that's stopping you from truly living and loving. So today, we're going to unpack this paradox, and I'll show you how your fierce self-reliance is both your greatest achievement and, at the same time, your biggest obstacle to real intimacy.
Let's just pause on this idea for a second, because it is the foundation for everything we're about to get into. This pattern, it's not about a lack of love or being cold, not at all. It's a survival mechanism, a brilliant one actually, that your brain built a long time ago to protect your very sense of who you are. The wall isn't there to push your partner away. The wall is there to protect you from what feels like a catastrophic loss of your own identity. But here's the catch. This defense, this shield, as amazing as it is at its job, has become a cage. It keeps the danger out, for sure, but it also keeps out the very connection you might be desperately craving.
And this right here, this is the central conflict. On one hand, you've developed this incredible, radical self-sufficiency. It's a strength, born from necessity, that says, I've got this. I can handle anything on my own. Your brain has become a master at detecting threats, constantly scanning for any sign that your freedom is at risk. But here's the flip side. Those exact same skills are now the very things holding you back. They show up as this chronic feeling of emotional isolation, even when you're in a relationship, and this frustrating pattern of relationships that seem to blow up right when they start getting good. The system designed to keep you safe is now sabotaging your happiness.
So how do we even begin to understand this, let alone change it? Well, we've got a clear roadmap. First, we're going to look at the wall you built, what this actually feels like day to day. Then we'll uncover this cycle of distance and a hidden machine called the deactivation loop. After that, we'll dive into the neuroscience of numbness to see what this is actually costing you biologically. And then, the most important part, we'll lay out a path to closeness with some real practical tools before we finish up by talking about redefining your safety.
Okay, let's jump in. Section 1, the wall you built. Before we get into all the mechanics and the brain science, we have to start right here with the lived experience. Because, to change a pattern, you first have to see it clearly. You have to know what it feels like. This isn't just theory. This is about validating that confusing and honestly often painful reality that this system creates every single day.
Does any of this hit home? That feeling of being totally suffocated, like you just need air the second someone gets emotionally close? Or how about this one? A relationship is going great, everything feels good, and then, boom, out of nowhere, you start noticing every single tiny flaw in your partner, the way they chew, that one word they always mispronounce. And that's usually followed by this sudden, overwhelming need for space. It's not a request, it's a demand from deep inside you. Maybe you feel this weird numbness when your partner says, I love you, or you find yourself creating exit plans right when things are supposed to be getting serious. Listen, these are not character flaws. They are symptoms of a protection system that is working perfectly.
So where in the world did these feelings come from? Well, they're guided by something called your internal working model. The easiest way to think about this is like a blueprint for relationships that your brain built when you were very young. Based on thousands of little moments with your caregivers, it created a set of rules and predictions about what happens when you need something, when you need comfort or closeness or help. And for someone with an avoidant pattern, that blueprint learned a really painful but very smart lesson. Expressing vulnerability leads to getting dismissed or ignored or rejected. Your needs weren't met, so your brain came up with a brilliant solution: stop having needs.
And that leads us to the core operating rule that's likely running your adult relationships right now. Your brain, based on all that early evidence, concluded that being on your own is survival, self-sufficiency is safety, which means that real, vulnerable intimacy gets flagged not just as uncomfortable, but as a direct threat to your very identity. And here's a wild insight. To your brain, the stability of your identity is more important than its accuracy. It would rather stick to the stable, known identity of I am self-sufficient than risk the scary uncertainty of a new identity like, hey, maybe I can be both independent and connected.
All right, so now that we get the feeling, let's look at the machine behind it. Because this isn't just some vague preference for being alone. We're about to map out a predictable, automated system, like a hidden machine running a script in the background of your relationships. And it has one singular purpose: maintain distance to protect who you are.
And I really need you to hear this. What you're experiencing is not a flaw in your personality. You are not broken. You are not incapable of love.
What you have is a pre-programmed, highly efficient, self-reinforcing system called the Deactivation Loop. And just seeing it as a system instead of a personal failing is the first, most powerful step toward changing it. It's a program you didn't write, but it is one you can absolutely learn to observe and eventually rewrite.
So let's get into Section 3, the Deactivation Loop. How does this machine actually work? How does it go from a sweet moment of connection to an urgent, desperate need for distance? Well, we can break it down into a really clear 4-step process. Think of this as the user manual for this part of your brain's operating system. Okay, here's the loop. First, you've got the trigger. Your partner wants to get closer. They share a deep feeling or they ask for more commitment. Your brain, using that old blueprint, sees this not as love but as a threat of engulfment. Step 2 is suppression. Your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, slams on the brakes, actively shutting down your own natural need for connection to avoid feeling vulnerable. Step 3 is the routine. You automatically run those behaviors that create distance. And finally, step 4, reinforcement. You get the space, that suffocating feeling goes away, and that wave of relief powerfully reinforces the entire script. See, distance is safe. Being on my own is how I survive.
So, what are those automated behaviors we just mentioned? We call them deactivating strategies. This is basically the toolkit your brain uses to get that distance back. It could be finding fault, suddenly nitpicking a partner you loved yesterday. It could be that emotional numbness we talked about, or just stonewalling, shutting down communication. Or maybe you suddenly get incredibly busy with work or a hobby. These are not random. They are precision tools with one goal: restore your independence no matter what.
So what's really happening inside your head during all this? Why is this loop so powerful, and why does it feel so exhausting? The answer is in the neuroscience. Let's look at the actual cognitive price you're paying for this safety. This is where we see the biological reality of the whole struggle.
The key mechanism is something called top-down control. Basically, your prefrontal cortex, the logical CEO part of your brain, is working overtime. It is actively pushing down and suppressing the natural bottom-up signals coming from your attachment system, that ancient part of you that craves connection to survive. This isn't just a passive thing. It's an intense, energy-burning battle inside your own head, with one part of your brain physically holding another part down.
And this chart really shows the staggering cost of that fight. Think of your mental energy as a finite resource, like the battery on your phone. When that deactivation loop kicks in, almost all of your battery, like 90% of it, is being used for one giant task: suppressing your attachment needs. That leaves almost nothing in the tank for anything else, especially the things a relationship needs to survive, like being emotionally available, being present, or feeling empathy.
And this explains so much, right? If you've ever felt completely wiped out after a simple emotional conversation with a partner, you are not making it up. That exhaustion is real. It's the physical toll of your brain burning a massive amount of energy just to keep your emotional system offline. There's actually a name for this state of mental burnout. It's called ego depletion. And it's the very real, very tangible price you pay for keeping that wall up.
Okay, so far we've mapped the problem, the system, and the science behind it. And that can feel a little heavy. But the whole point of understanding how a machine works is so you can learn how to operate it differently. So let's shift from just explaining to empowering. It's time to talk about the practical, manageable tools you can start using to recalibrate this whole system.
We can move toward what psychologists call earned security with 3 main tools. First, we need to map the script, basically become a detective of our own triggers and routines. Second, we can practice something I like to call minimal viable vulnerability, or MVV. These tiny, safe experiments in being open. And third, we can learn to affirm our needs, turning that impulse to run into a conscious act of self-care.
Here's the first tool, and it's a simple one. It's called the Flaw Audit. The next time you feel that urge to pull away and your mind is suddenly a highlight reel of everything wrong with your partner, just pause, take a breath, and ask yourself this one really powerful question. Is this a real, deal-breaking flaw, or is this just a deactivation strategy my brain is using to get the distance it thinks it needs to be safe? Just asking the question is huge. It interrupts the automatic loop and creates a little space, and in that space, that's where you find the power to choose.
All right, tool number 2, minimal viable vulnerability. Now, this is not about suddenly spilling your deepest, darkest secrets. That would be way too overwhelming. Instead, it's about creating a tiny, manageable, almost scientific experiment. You can even use an if-then formula. For example, if my partner asks about my day, then I will share one sentence about how I actually felt, not just what I did. Or, If my partner asks for a hug, then I will stay present in that hug for 5 full seconds. It's a small goal you can actually win at.
So why does this work? It's simple. You are systematically giving your brain new data. That old internal working model is just a bunch of predictions based on old information. Every single time you do a small act of vulnerability, an MVV, and the world doesn't end, you're providing a corrective experience. You're creating new evidence. You are slowly, safely, and scientifically teaching your nervous system that vulnerability, here and now, does not have to end in that catastrophic pain it learned to expect a long time ago.
And this brings us to our final and maybe the most important section of all. All of this work, understanding the loop, practicing these tools, gathering that new data, it's all heading toward one thing: fundamentally upgrading your definition of what it even means to be safe. It's about shifting from a model built for just surviving to one that allows you to actually thrive in connection.
Let's just look at the old definition of safety versus the new one we want to build. The old safety was all about absolute self-sufficiency, that belief that I don't need anyone. The new safety is about sustainable interdependence, knowing you can lean on others while still being strong in yourself. The old safety meant avoiding your needs. The new safety is about acknowledging that you have needs for both space and connection, and that both are valid. And maybe the biggest one, the old way was about building walls to keep everybody out. The new way is about learning to set healthy boundaries, which aren't meant to shut people out, but to let the right people in safely.
I really want to leave you with this one last thought. That deep, primal fear of being consumed by a relationship, of losing who you are, I know it feels like a prophecy. It feels like a true warning about what's to come. But it's not. It's a memory. It's the echo of a time when you were little and you truly didn't have a voice, when you had no power to set your own terms. It is not a reflection of the capable, strong adult you are today. Your history does not have to be your destiny. The past doesn't get to write your future.